to BIMS TV. I'm Chanté Lively, and this is BIMS Bites. And today I'll be biting into Georgia's Maritime Forest. Let's go over a quick refresher on Georgia's coast. The state of Georgia is home to 100 miles of coastline connected to the Atlantic Ocean. It also has around 14 barrier islands situated between the mainland and the ocean. I personally worked on Skidaway Island. The shape and size of the islands are constantly changing, and out of the 14 islands, many of them aren't easily accessible to humans anymore due to their designation as parks, wildlife refuges, historic landmarks, and more. Each island has its own unique, rich history of inhabitation for thousands of years, thanks to the indigenous Muskogee people, Spanish and English colonizers, and citizens of the United States. Depending on what type of barrier island or even side of the island you're on, you can find different ecosystems. For example, Wausau Island, an outer barrier island and national wildlife refuge, hosts a variety of habitats such as a sandy beach, dune systems, freshwater sloughs between the dunes, and an old-growth maritime forest on its Atlantic Ocean-facing side. The opposite side, facing the mainland and its many rivers and sounds, is connected to the Maritime Forest and home to the salt marsh. You can see that on Skidaway Island, an inner barrier island that only houses the Maritime Forest and salt marsh ecosystems. Now about the Maritime Forest. First, let's break down the term. Mar is the Latin root word for sea. Maritime refers to living or found in or near the sea. And then when we put it all together, a maritime forest is a forest by the sea under its influence. It's able to survive the strong winds, salt spray, and even short-term submersion under salt water, often connected with life near the ocean. This forest develops and thrives on barrier islands in the adjacent coastal mainland. They form on higher elevations than that of wetlands or the dunes. Similar ecosystems to Georgia's forest can be found along the Atlantic coast from coastal North Carolina through the northern part of Florida. However, they may be heavily impacted by human activity and natural events throughout the years. Have you ever taken a walk in a maritime forest? It's amazing and consists of a wide diversity of native plant and animal life. Let's look at a little snapshot here, starting from the bottom up. The soil profile of the forest floor is a mixture of sand and rich sedimentary deposits due to bits and pieces of the Appalachian Mountains that was able to survive the journey from the mountains to the coast. Overall, it's sturdy and hardy with some good topsoil. You may see white-tailed deer, green tree frogs, and squareback crabs, which can climb trees, so you need to look up, passing by in the forest. In the understory, many shade-tolerant plant species are found here as it does not receive much sunlight because of the dense canopy. See the cabbage palm, a symbol of the transition community from the salt marsh to the woody vegetation of the maritime forest. This palm of curved, fan-shaped leaves supported by hardy wood stalks can grow up to 90 feet tall. Below it, you may see saw palmetto, a shrubby palm that grows close to the ground with a horizontal trunk. Its trunk is said to resemble an alligator's back. You can even use a saw palmetto as a perfect broom. Lastly, watch out for the yaupon holly. Recognizable with its small shiny leaves and bright red berries, indigenous people and early European settlers used the leaves to make a strong caffeinated tea. In the dense canopy, we see a majestic live oak tree, a distinct feature of the maritime forest. These oaks are large evergreen trees with widely spreading branches that can grow up to 60 feet tall. Known as the state tree of Georgia, live oaks were historically used for shipbuilding. On top of the tree, there are epiphytes, plants that grow on top of another plant or object for physical support. If you ever have visited Savannah, Georgia, with its many live oak trees, you would have seen this slender gray hanging epiphyte, Spanish moss. Spanish moss is actually not a type of moss, nor from Spain. It's in the bromeliad family, closely related to pineapples. It's wind-pollinated and not harmful to the touch, so no red bugs lying in wait here. Also on the tree is resurrection fern, which can lose up to 75% or to 97% of its water content and look dead, but come back to life or resurrect and look green and healthy when exposed to water again. The oak in this picture is the Roebling oak on Skidaway Island, said to be around 300 years old. The Roebling family owned and operated Skidaway Island as a Black Angus cattle farm until they donated the land and its buildings to the state of Georgia in the 1960s. With the cattle farm, several of the live oaks were cut down, making way for ecological succession. Ecological succession is the natural transition of plant communities to a climax community happening over time. It can be initiated by disturbances in the aftermath of natural sources like fire or hurricanes, or human impacts like logging. These disruptive events can damage a maritime forest live oak tree climax community. On Skidaway Island, fire and logging cleared the land, creating open space for understory grasses and herbs to grow without the shade of a live oak. This also allowed loblolly pines to become the dominant tree species. It's a very common sight on younger barrier islands as pines grow in open areas with sandy or drier soils or just in areas with a history of human disturbance. As the barrier island matures, live oaks and other trees move back into the ecosystem, bringing back the dense canopy in our climax community. The ecosystem services of the maritime forest include acting as protective barriers to the mainland from powerful forces of wind, tide, storms, and hurricanes, strong roots that stabilize the shoreline as protection from erosion and even facilitate groundwater recharge, providing critical habitat and resting area for migratory birds, being home to a variety of threatened and endangered native flora and fauna, and cultural importance and recreational activities. Maritime forests are important to Georgia and hopefully to you. All around the globe, maritime forests are considered globally rare due to their restricted distribution range, narrow habitat requirements, and threats from coastal development, sea level rise, and saltwater intrusion. With a reliance on shallow freshwater, the forest cannot tolerate long exposure to saltwater. Even too much salt spray can be harmful to some species of trees. However, remember, Georgia is fortunate to have an extensive span of protected forests along its coast, especially on its barrier islands. With the support of interested residents, organizations, and federal and state entities, much of Georgia's 100 miles of coastline have been and will continue to be protected. Thanks so much for watching this BIMS Bites on Georgia's maritime forest. Once again, I'm Chanté Lively, and if you want to hear me gush about Georgia ecosystems, feel free to check out my website or reach out to me by email. Please follow, like, and subscribe Black and Marine Science on all social media platforms. And I'll see you soon.